Hello friends, welcome to my channel Watercolor Painting in the Afternoon. My name is Beth. Today I wanted to continue on my journey to find a simple way to paint a complex flower. Two complex flowers actually. One is the chrysanthemum, which I went over with you last time. We painted them like this. And that is a very simple way to paint a chrysanthemum. But now not all chrysanthemums look this simple. Some of them are so full and bloomed out that some of the petals begin to fall away and they're just very complex and wiggly and beautiful and all of that. And I wanted a different way to paint those as well. And I'm not sure what that way is. So I've looked at a lot of different folks and how they paint them, and I'm just gonna kind of mush them all together and try to make something that I think is simple and yet attractive. I also wanted to show you a new way that I found to paint a rose, and it has some negative painting involved, and I wanted to give that a try as well. Now all of this takes some time because we have to let layers dry, and so no sooner have you picked up your brush and put on a layer then you have to put it down and let it completely dry. So it is time consuming to do some of these florals, but yeah, we're going to give it a try. We're going to see what we can do, and I hope you'll join with me. So the first thing I'm going to do this morning, or this afternoon actually, it is actually afternoon, is I've got my clean water and I've got a number 10 round Princeton. And I think I'm going to make a kind of an orangey red chrysanthemum. So I'm going to start with some yellow paint. Put that down first, right here. Bright yellow, right? And I'm going to add to that some red paint. And we're going to make a nice orange. And it doesn't need to be a deep dark orange. This is a little bit of a thin consistency, or a medium to thin consistency of paint. Does not need to be thick, at least at the beginning. So to do a chrysanthemum that is fully open and doing all kinds of beautiful things, we're going to start from the center and we're going to paint outward. All right, so I'm going to start with just the little petals that come inward on the chrysanthemum like that, and then we're going to paint a few of the bigger petals that come around. And again, these are just very light. I'm not trying to paint anything too big, you know, or too deep yet. Come around on this side here and paint some of those that are facing away from us, that are over here facing away. And then guess what? We kind of have to let that dry out, you know, and not do too awful much more to it. I'm just going to add a few more little petals here on the side as they come up and around, and maybe a few hanging downward like that, because they do open up so much, you know, that some of the petals begin to fall backward and fall away. Let's put the darker dots of color up here in the center where those two parts will meet. Now that's kind of the rudimentary shape of the chrysanthemum that we're going to use. It's very rudimentary. In fact, if I left it like that, you would wonder whether it was a flower or a crab. But we're not going to touch it now until it is completely dry. And while that's happening, while it's drying, I wanted to show you a way of painting a rose that is done with negative painting. And by negative painting, I just simply mean the darker color comes up against the lighter color and makes a crisp line, so that you can see that the lighter that the lighter color really stands out. Okay, so let's start. Let's start by painting the rose the way that we usually do, or that I usually do anyway, with a couple. Now this rose is going to be facing us, okay? So with just a couple of little C curves. Just a couple of little C curves in the center. And I'm going to rinse my brush off. And I'm just going to touch the outer edge of those C curves, just the outer edge, and pull it out a little bit. All right? It's kind of delicate work, isn't it? Definitely not something that we are going to do fast. It still looks loose, but it's not something we're going to do really fast, because now that must dry. Just like this, must dry. So we're just going to wait. All right, I think this is dry enough. I have mixed a darker orange, thicker consistency. If you care to see, it looks kind of like this. And we're going to put the same kinds of petals around the flower, only this time they'll stand out more because the paint consistency is thicker. Remember, in watercolor we always put down the light color first. So coming right in here, I'm just going to add a few little bits and pieces. This may actually still be a little bit damp. One little piece there acted like it was a little damp. All right, they don't all have to connect. And the reason that they don't is because we're doing something very loose here. We're not trying to make it look realistic. Just make that a little bit neater right there. Okay. And then once again, yeah, you know, we have to we have to let it dry, because the last little bit that we're going to put in here is going to be a very orangey red color, and you'll see just how much of a contrast there is there. Excuse me, I just banged my microphone. Okay, here the rose. Doesn't look like much, does it? What we're going to do is put our next little layer on. This is very time consuming, I've got to tell you, and it's a little bit, maybe for me, it's a little too time consuming, but I think the effect is so cool, and I'm going to give it a try. Let's just see. The next set of petals must touch the first set. Okay, so come all the way into the center and just do your little petal right there. Come around, do the next one, and it must touch as well. And then come around and do the final one. We're going to put 3 in. All right, and then we're going to rinse the brush off all the way, pat it dry just a little. We want some water in there. Then we're going to touch the outside of that line and bring it around. And what we're making is the rest of that petal. But I'm leaving the line that this makes crisp. I'm leaving that inner line nice and crisp. I'm not painting all the way into that line. I'm just touching the edge of it and pulling out a petal. I hope that makes some sense. I hope it does, because I know this is a little bit more of a tedious way to do this. It's still loose though, I promise. It's still loose, and it's still going to come across loose. Okay, and then we're just gonna fill it in a little bit there. And now we wait. We must wait again. And we have to wait for both of them to get all the way dry. So, off I go. All right, I'm back, and this is pretty dry. I actually had to use my blow dryer a little bit because I got impatient. But now we're going to put our thickest and darkest color in yet, this red-orange, very thick, very dark consistency of paint. and we're going to put that in last. So we're going to just have not too much of this because this is more, I think this is more of an accent color. Okay, and so not too much. We're going to, oops, let's get a little bit, let's get that nice and dark. We're going to pull it down this way and put some on the outside as well, and kind of in the center as well, just like that. Now I'm going to stop because the last thing that we want to do here, we're going to want to put in right here along this line that I'm just kind of lifting out a little bit so you can see it. We're going to want to put our shadow right in there because that's where the main flower meets the petals that have sort of dropped away from the flower. I kind of think it maybe needs a little indication of this darker color in the back there too. You know, I always do this. I say, okay, that's enough. And then I start putting more stuff in. Okay, that's enough. Wait, one more. No, I'm just kidding. All right, now the rose. Let's, excuse me. Let's do the rose. Please excuse me. We're going to start with this, the deep dark red. Remember, on this, we're going for a really thick red. I'm just dipping right into the paint. And we're going to put our next row of petals. We must touch the last inner row of petals, just like this. Okay, and another one, like that. Be sure you get nice thick paint on your brush. Another one right here, and the final one right here. And you're going to start seeing this rose appear. And it's really a very cool effect. I liked it when I saw it and I wanted to try it so much, so badly. So I started playing with it, and when I did, I was like, oh, this is so cool, because it just really looks like a real rose. You know, I guess it's still a loose rose, and it's still kind of abstract-y, but it also looks like a real rose, and it's got the shadows in the right place. That's important. You've probably seen me do those roses that are just a series of C curves, you know, and a lot of people do those. They show you how to do those on the tutorials and stuff, because that's probably the easiest loose rose you can do. This is not hard, it's just time consuming. I got a little speck of paint there. Okay. Yeah, it's not hard, it's just time consuming, and you know, some people don't want to take that much time, and I don't blame them. It depends on how much time you have to do these things. Now, while this one is drying, I'm going to show you the same method, but using one of my watercolor pens. This is a Tombow. I mean, it's just bright red. The number on it is 885. I don't know, does Tombow make 885 colors? Wow. Well, anyway, this is quicker, and I think even more effective, but you be the judge. So I'm going to make my little C curve in here with my red Tombow pen. Two little C curves that are just kind of loving on each other right there. And we're going to come in and we're just going to pull that color out a little bit. This also has to dry, so you don't get out of that. It's a little quicker, but you're not going to get out of making it dry. You're not going to get out of it. All right, I think maybe we can come back to this and do a stem. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to use this Green Apatite Genuine, very dark olivey color, And with it, I'm going to add this deep teal, which I have no other way of telling you what it is because it's just a little chip of paint that came off of an old set. And I have no idea what color it's called. I call it deep teal. It just blues the green up, right? So then I'm going to pull this down. I hope this works. I hope y'all get something out of this because I think this is a cool way to learn how to paint. It's just to take, let's say, a single flower type and just learn a lot of different ways to paint that single flower, and you can do all sorts of stuff with it. Now these leaves kind of have a tooth to them, I guess, like that, and we want to just pull that dark paint down there at the bottom. I like that mottled look there. I think that looks kind of cool, and it dries looking cool. Some people don't like it. I do. Just think it looks nice. Okay, and then we're gonna just like that. Okay. So that's my chrysanthemum pretty much. I think you could go back and add a little bit of detail to those leaves, and maybe I will. Oh, the shadow. We almost forgot the shadow. I almost forgot the shadow. I'm going to take a little bit of the red, and just plain red here, just red. And I'm going to add its opposite, which is green. And we're going to make a little bit of a brownish color here that still reads reddish, but also has a darker brown. Now, I don't know, is this going to be dark enough? Let's find out. Just going to touch it. Just barely touch it. Little dots right along the inside there. Now, dry your brush, dry the brush, dry the brush. And we're going to pull some of that up. You know, just make it look like it belongs there. Oh, I just faded it out a lot, didn't I? You know what, maybe I should just get a brown instead. Like this sepia. Sepia is a very dark brown. It's kind of brown and black is what it is. But brown automatically looks like it has some red in it, you know? So I'm just gonna do it like that. Okay, I mean, you know, that's not wonderful or anything, but it's all right. If we pull it up into the petals a little, it might look a little bit more natural. We can do that. Bring it up and bring it down. Just like that. Huh. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I think that looks pretty decent. And, you know, if you wanted to put more detail into your leaves, you can certainly do that. You make it a darker green, and then come along and, you know, maybe put some veining into your leaves. It can be very, very loose, just like that. I think that's a nice looking chrysanthemum. I've seen several people do it this way. Everybody has their own little method, but I think that looks pretty good. Let's go back to our rose. Let's finish that up. I want to get that thick red paint again. Thick red paint, thick red paint. Right there on my brush. That's too thick. It's got some clumps on it. Don't get clumps. Clumps will ruin your painting. Okay, and we're going to just put these last petals in. This is the last I'm going to do of this. I think maybe we need to move on. Okay. Last petals, and I'm just going to pull them out. Just by touching the petal, I'm pulling out that paint, and it's making the outer petal. Like, this is the inner petal, and by just touching the paint, I'm making the outer petal. I think it's a very interesting way to do your roses. If you have the patience for it, it looks really neat. So, see there? Now, I think what we'll do is we'll just let that dry, and then we'll come back and we'll define where the petals meet, where they meet. And because this looks like one solid petal, right? So we want to define where they are. That's all. All right, let's come down here where I had the Tombow pen, and we're gonna touch the inside and start doing the same method that we did before. And this time I think I'm gonna make my brush a little less wet. Let's see what happens when we do that. You see how it definitely blooms outward, and it makes that shadow that's in the crevice between each petal, which I think is so cool. That's so neat. I hadn't done it that way before. Maybe you have. Maybe none of this is new to you. But it was to me, so I thought I would show you. Go ahead, dry off. I'll be right back. All right, I went ahead and did an extra layer on this because it's going to take entirely too long if I don't kind of do a little bit of it ahead. And I'm making the petals here kind of jagged because, you know, sometimes rose petals look like that. And, sorry, I'm rattling around a little bit here. Here we go. All right, and you can kind of see how that's going to look. I think it looks super cool. Anyway, this is the outer layer. We just touch it with the water. Pull those petals out while leaving the crisp edge on the inside of our line. All right. Now, while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the other rose, this one right here, by simply putting the outline of the petals in. So, for example, there might be a petal here and here. And maybe there's a petal here, coming in here like that. And it looks kind of like there's one there and here and coming around that way. And all I'm doing is just putting in where the petals meet, you know, where they meet around the flower. I'm going to fuzz it out just a little bit because I don't want that to be a harsh line. I just want to indicate. So I'm just going to come on either side of that line and just fade it out a little bit. And that's pretty much it. That's the entire rose. And I think it looks pretty interesting this way. I think it's an interesting way to do a rose. It really makes those deep shadows look interesting. I still like the way that the pen works, and we're going to just do the final little bits of this as well. And you can see the petals. I don't know, maybe that's not necessary. but I kind of feel like it is because I want to be able to see where the petals meet. There would be a little shadow right there, I think. So, you know, I'm putting that extra little bit in. I don't know, maybe it's necessary, maybe it's not. It doesn't matter, one way or the other. I think it just looks a little bit more finished that way. All right. Anyway, there they are. The traditional way that I've always done roses, and this is much looser, much quicker, much looser, all of that, is just to do your little C curves and then to begin to press down a little bit harder. I'm sorry, this paint is chipping because it's cheap. Press down a little bit harder, but again, you're going to touch the last petal that you put in. You're going to touch it and come around, and then do it again. And this does leave white spaces where I think there ought to be shadows. But your eye doesn't perceive it that way. Your eye looks at that and sees the rose. And, you know, so you can do this either way, and it'll be fine. So then you just start doing a much more loose pattern. I really am getting a lot of that. Paint is just coming off. A loose pattern around the rose. You want to have a little bit of the white space, and that's how people do these loose roses. And that's fine. It's good. It's a good way to do it. You can then take your paint and make the inside a little bit darker, and that helps it to look like a real rose. But this is just another way to do it, right? That's just another way to do it, and it's an interesting way to do it, and I wanted to show that to you today. And you know, it's slow. I can attest that it is a slow way to go, but pretty cool looking in the end. Now this chrysanthemum too, I think, looks pretty neat, and it's just another way that people do their chrysanthemums. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you'll give it a try and let me know how it worked for you, because I'm not sure how I would do one on its side. I'm not sure how you would do one that's kind of tilted or looking the other way. So I'm not sure how it would look in a big bouquet, or how you would go about doing that. But give it a try and let me know. I would love to see anybody's work, or at least hear about it. Thanks for watching today, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.